This first video is just going to be getting BSP up and running, the kind of just the really basics of it. So you want to go to this link up here. It'll be in the description of the video, hopefully. You want to get the 0.96b installer and 0.96d executable. Next, just go to wherever you have them downloaded. I have them here, so highlight both, use 7-zip or WinRAR or whatever you have, and unzip them to their folders. First go to B, just to install here. It should give you the default is, I think, CBSP. Then you want to go to D after you have that done, and just highlight the two executables, copy, go to your BSP directory, and Control-V, and overwrite them, and you should be all set up to start it. So when you first download it, it's going to look kind of bad. So use that SSE2 version. Quake 2, open. You might get some error if you don't have all the models correct. And go up to File and New, and it's going to look something like this, with everything just kind of in the corner. It looks kind of bad. You can move them around, you can do whatever you want. You can see the 3D, XY, XZ, and YZ, ents, groups, and eventually this will be textures. I can't stand the default colors or anything like that, so I'll link what I use, and you can just copy and paste those into your directory. This is the way I have mine set up. You can see I have the 3D over here, XY, YZ, and XZ, and then ents and textures. And if you want to see surface textures, you can just hit S. If you want to see groups, you can just hit G. One other thing about the files I'll include. So this is kind of my default working space. You can see this is a top view. So anything you draw in here will, you can see it pretty easily. And these are the two side views. Sometimes if you need a little bit more top view or 3D and less side, you can just hit Control-2 and you can shrink those up a little bit. And if you're doing purely textures, Control-3 will give you a big texture window and a big 3D window. Control-1 is just back to default. To use this setup here, you can just go into your BSP folder and then settings, and you can see bsp.config and bsp.ini. You just want to replace those two with the two I link in the description. Make sure that BSP is not running when you do that. Otherwise, they'll just get overwritten. What you want to be able to do is actually load textures. So if you go up to File, Preferences, and then Game Directories, as long as you have everything in default, it should be okay. But if you're looking at your map directory, your palette file, your pack file, and your texture files, so you can see here the default is C, Quake 2, Base Q2, and then all that. And you can see if I'm going into my C and Quake 2 and Base Q2, everything should be in here. If you have anything different from that, you just want to check what it is up here and copy and paste that right into here. Just check these paths. I really can't do this for you. This next step is actually loading textures, so you can either go up here and load textures from the pack or from a directory, or you can just hit P and L. For the sake of this, I'll just do a pack, so hit P and E1, U1, since everybody should have that, as long as your textures are in the right place. And you can see here they're already sorted nicely, but typically when I load for the first time, you want to go to set thumbnail size and make it 60. That'll do 3 across if you're using my settings. And then stretch. That just makes the whole texture show regardless of how large they are. That's mostly for when you're dealing with higher res ones. Getting used to these windows here, if you right click and hold, you can drag it around. Scroll wheel zooms in and out. Up here you can see this is the grid size, so 64, to put it in perspective, is the height of the character model. 32 would be the size when you're crouching, and 48 is your, I guess I would call it width. I usually use 16 for most of my outlining. You might want to use like 32 or 64 if you're just starting out, but anything works. Putting down a first block. So I'm just going to use floor 3-1 just to start off here. And you can see these more solid lines are the center. So if you just do something like that, you'll see it appear down here. And again, you can see this is the center. I typically try to put my floor right on the 0 axis. It makes it a little bit easier. Selecting and deselecting brushes or textures, whatever you want to call them. So if it's highlighted in yellow like this, it means it's selected. If you just hit escape, it'll deselect. To select it again, just click it, and that's all there is to it. To move the camera, it's the arrow keys, so kind of self-explanatory. Back and forward, do that. Left and right actually rotate. Home and end, go up and down. Page down and delete, rotate that way. Page up and insert, move left and right. Typically, I just don't have to use much else other than arrow keys and home and end. Just always try to keep everything in kind of a decent perspective. If you didn't notice earlier, this is actually the camera here, this little yellow guy. You can move him around manually, up and down here, same as over here. It's sometimes useful if you need to get across somewhere quickly. But anyways, so you have this down here. So just making your first room here. There's actually an extruded room, like auto maker. I don't really recommend it, at least for this purpose, because it gets you in the habit of making squares, which is not good in the majority of times. But for the purpose of this, I'll just have you use that. So just make it kind of however big you want to. Just do this size or so. And so this extruded room maker, it'll actually create the walls on the outside of whatever bounds you set here. So if you just hit make, you can set the wall thickness. I'll make it 16, and you can see it does that. So if you go inside here, every texture is the same. Since every texture is a floor texture, that's probably not the best thing to do. And so if you want to select multiple things, you want to select all 4 walls, all you have to do is click on them. There's no special key to hold or anything like that. So just select those 4, you can tell if it's all lit up in red here. Then find another texture to use for a wall. So I'm just going to use CMETS 1, and you can actually just do Alt-B, and that will do the entire texture with that one, or the entire brush with that. So another option is if you want to do just the face of a brush with a texture, you can just do Alt-F. It's useful in some cases if you're putting something that you can see from multiple sides. So in pretty much all maps, you're either going to have skylighting or indoor lighting, and I think skylighting is probably easier, so you're going to want to start with that. And if you scroll down, you'll find Sky 1. It doesn't actually matter what you use, it's just easier to use an actual sky texture. So just select the roof and make it that. If you press S, it should bring up surface textures, or surface properties. And you can see that sky is already selected, and what that means is that whatever environment you set, that's what it will show up in. And then no draw just means that it puts a little bit less load on the compiler. Alright, so again, if you have this highlighted here, and you hit S, you'll also see one for light, and if you click that, and then you can go to value up here, and just type something. 100's probably enough to light a small room. It's probably way overkill, actually. And then you'll see the same apply face and apply brush. You want to apply it to the brush. Absolute final step in making a walkable box room is going down to ends here, and if you go all the way to the top, you'll see info players start. This is best for testing maps. Deathmatch is what you'll actually use if you're making either DM, CTF, anything like that. So let's just put an info start indigo, and you hit make end with no brushes selected, and you'll see it will show up here, but it's off-centered. If you just hit Alt-S, it'll ask you to snap, and go ahead and do that. And probably just put it somewhere down in the center here. So you can see again, it's still off-centered there. But that's just kind of the way it is. It'll always be a little bit higher. Now, if you want to actually make everything flush, you can select this guy and you can make the grid smaller. And go to 1 and make it absolutely even with this, or even slightly below. Now the other thing is you see he's facing to the side there, and that's not really ideal. So you can see here, when you click these 0, 90, whatever you want to do, you can see an arrow pops up. So up is 90, and you can now see that he's facing us. You can do that with pretty much any end, like teleporters, anything like that. Now you can save it. Just go up File, Save, and it should be empty if this is your first one. Don't name it Default. That's just bad to do. I'll just name it Testing. So now it should be up here, and it's important to do that before you export the first time. So to compile, you want to go up to Export, and you'll see 4 options here. I'll briefly go over what each of them are, I guess. Quake 2, or your BSP, and then Quake 2, and go to Bats. You'll see the 4 show up there. I have them opened already. So what you want to use, well, technically I'll start with no QRED. So what that means is you're doing QBSP and you're doing a fast QViz. So QBSP is required to even see the map ever. And QViz just makes things, I guess, usable, so you can walk around and do things like that. However, QRED won't have any lighting, so everything will just be full bright, which is fine if you're just testing something, if you just want to move around in your map. But we have lighting, so the minimum we really want to use is fast. So you can see here the modifier is still fast to QViz, which means that your R speeds won't be perfect, but it'll be usable. And now we are lighting with RGRAD, and the setting here that makes it faster is bounce 0, which just means that the light rays don't bounce off of anything like they would in the full or final. Well, full and final, full will just chop off the things that make this faster, and final will actually make it a little bit better than full would be. So we'll just do fast for this. We'll say you want to save it, and then I'll just continue. So as long as everything goes okay, it should load in, and you should see some darkness, some shadows, nothing too fancy. You should look up, see some sky, and I guess I should note too that I have mine actually load into jump mod so that I can store and things like that. I'll explain how to do that a little bit later as you're starting to edit some config files. But yeah, so that's pretty basic. I guess I'll mostly leave it with that. I can go into more detail with how to do boxes, things like that later. Actually, one cool feature at the end here, with the new BSP sort of executable, I guess, is if you go to your Quake folder in BaseQ2, or wherever you want to keep your skyboxes, environment maps, whatever you want to call them. So this is mine, you can see here. And then if you go up to File, Preferences, Game and Directories, and then you change to OpenGL, you can see down here there's GL Skybox Name and GL Skybox Path. So you want to make this one that path, and you want to change this to just any sky that you typically like. I use Miramar a lot, so I'll type Miramar. And you can actually see that it replaces the sky texture with the actual environment map. It's just a little bit easier to work with, and I think you get a better idea for what your map actually might look like.